No one expected this. Lewis Hamilton breaks down emotionally during Bahrain qualifying, and Ferrari responds with something no one saw coming. Today I'm telling you everything you didn't see on TV, Hamilton's public apology, Ferrari's humane response, and how this moment could change the history of F1 this year. Like, subscribe, and stay with me until the end because this episode has much more to it than meets the eye. Lewis Hamilton arrived in Bahrain with enormous expectations hanging over his shoulders. Not only because it was the start of a new era with Ferrari, but because it was the first real opportunity to prove that his decision to leave Mercedes had been the right one. However, what happened during qualifying was completely opposite of what he and the entire motorsport world expected. He finished 9th. In any other context, that result might have gone unnoticed. But not when his teammate, Charles Leclerc, managed to get into 3rd place, which would later become 2nd after a penalty for Russell, and he squeezed the new SF25 as if it were an extension of his body. The difference between them wasn't just in positions, it was a chasm in times. Leclerc clocked 1 minute and 30.175 seconds. Hamilton 1 minute and 30.772 seconds. More than half a second. In Formula 1, half a second is an eternity. What came next was unprecedented. At the end of the session, Hamilton radioed his team and uttered words no one expected to hear from him. "I'm sorry, guys. I'm really sorry." A public, genuine, unfiltered apology. It wasn't an excuse, it was the voice of a broken champion. A voice filled with frustration, helplessness, but also respect for the team that had opened its doors to him. Days later, in interviews, he made it clear, "I feel like I'm letting Ferrari down." And those words were an emotional bombshell. Because coming from Hamilton, the driver who dominated an era, who battled legends and re-emerged more than once, that confession doesn't just show vulnerability, it shows humanity. The vulnerability of someone who knows their story is being rewritten, but who still can't find the right one. This wasn't just a bad day. It was a turning point. Because behind that result lies something deeper. An adaptation process that hasn't yet taken hold, a car that doesn't respond like his old Mercedes, and a completely different environment that demands the best, but which also, as we'll see later, knows when to contain rather than push. And here lies the true essence of the moment. It wasn't a sporting defeat, it was an emotional rift. But as in every good story, it's through that rift that the light begins to shine through. After the emotional blow of qualifying in Bahrain, all eyes turned to Ferrari. How would the most demanding and media-driven team in Formula 1 react to such a bitter debut from its new superstar? The history of the Scuderia is full of episodes in which internal pressure has consumed great talents. But this time, something was different. Fred Vasseur, the team principal, was quick to speak. And his speech wasn't that of an annoyed boss, nor that of a leader desperate for results. It was that of a man who understood exactly what his driver needed to hear at that moment. Far from criticism, Vasseur offered perspective. He emphasized that Hamilton had had pace all weekend and that the adaptation process was inevitable and natural. But the most powerful part of his message wasn't the technical aspect. It was the human aspect. Vasseur built a shield. Not to protect Hamilton from media criticism, but so that the driver himself could breathe within the team. He said clearly, "We will work on the car and develop it for Lewis, but he also has to make a step." Those words mark a clear line, mutual commitment. There is no unilateral pressure, there is an alliance. Vasseur's message was directed at both the paddock and Maranello. This isn't a one-race project. It's not about Hamilton winning from day one. It's about building something that can challenge Red Bull, McLaren, and anyone else who crosses the path. And that, in Formula 1, is done from a place of stability, not urgency. Vasseur also pointed out that Hamilton came from a completely different structure. More than a decade at Mercedes. Methods, engineering, language, processes. Everything is different. Adapting to Ferrari isn't just about changing cars. It's about immersing yourself in a different racing culture, a different way of understanding competition. And that, even for a 7-time champion, takes time. But perhaps the most significant thing was what he didn't say. Because at Ferrari, silence also communicates. There were no rumors of a crisis. There were no changes in strategy. No one asked for public explanations. The team closed ranks. And in a sport where drivers are often the first to be pointed out when something goes wrong, that attitude made the difference. True leadership isn't always measured by immediate results. Sometimes, it's measured by the ability to sustain a champion when they need it most. And that was exactly what Ferrari did in Bahrain. Fred Vasseur didn't just lead a team that weekend. He reminded Lewis Hamilton that even if the present is uncomfortable, there is a future he can still ride alongside them. The Ferrari SF25 is not an easy car. It's fast, it's aggressive, and it has potential that was demonstrated in the hands of Charles Leclerc during qualifying in Bahrain. But in Lewis Hamilton's case, that same car felt like an untamed creature. A car with a life of its own, with unpredictable reactions, and with an aerodynamic language completely different from the one it dominated for more than a decade at Mercedes. In Bahrain, Ferrari debuted its first major update package of the year. Substantial changes to the car's floor, the tunnel edges, the barriers that manage aerodynamic flow, and even the diffuser geometry. A meticulous technical redesign aimed at correcting Ferrari's shortcomings in slow corners, without sacrificing speed on the straights or stability in fast corners. Leclerc understood this immediately. From the first lap, the Monegasque knew how to attack the car's new aerodynamic profile. He found the limit, he pushed it, and he got results. But for Hamilton, it was a different story. He's still in the phase of listening to the car, understanding how it responds under aggressive braking, how it behaves with the DRS open, how it moves in dirty air when trying to overtake. That gap between driver and machine isn't technical. It's sensorial. It's a matter of trust, of knowing that when you turn the steering wheel, the car will react exactly as you expect. And that is only built with time, with mistakes, and with laps. Many laps. But in modern Formula One, time is the scarcest resource there is. Hamilton is used to a different kind of response. At Mercedes, his driving style evolved for years around a completely different technical concept. The balance of the rear axle, the way the car transferred weight in corners, even the way the car interacted with the edges of the track. All of that is different now. And every one of those differences is amplified at 300 kilometers per hour. The frustration he showed in Bahrain wasn't just about finishing outside the top 5. It was about feeling that the car has what it takes to win, but he still doesn't know how to extract it. A kind of technical impotence that goes beyond talent and experience. Because in Formula One, the one who knows the best driver doesn't win. The one who gets the car working for them the fastest wins. And that, as of today, hasn't yet happened with Hamilton and the SF25. It's a bond that's still being built. But what makes this story so fascinating is precisely that, knowing that if he can master this red beast, if he can synchronize with its aerodynamic DNA, whatever comes next can be unstoppable. In any team with two elite drivers, the line between collaboration and conflict is always blurred. But at Ferrari, that line is even thinner. And when one of those drivers is named Lewis Hamilton and the other Charles Leclerc, what's brewing isn't simply a rivalry. It's a silent tug-of-war that can define not only the future of the team, but also the emotional and sporting stability of its two protagonists. Bahrain was just the first example. While Hamilton struggled against a car he doesn't understand, Leclerc shot to the front, taking advantage of every inch of the improved SF25. The gap in qualifying was a symbolic slap in the face. Not because of the result itself, but because of what it represents. A newcomer, a 7-time world champion with the media pressure of half the planet on him, and the other, a veteran insider, comfortable, confident, familiar with every technical detail of the car and every look in the paddock. Leclerc doesn't just know the car. He knows Ferrari. He knows how the Scuderia operates politically. He knows when to speak, when to remain silent, and how to gain media attention without seeming to beg for it. His integration with the engineers is absolute. He is a silent leader. And that's why, every time Leclerc performs better than Hamilton, even by thousandths of a second, the message the team receives is clear. This car was made for him. But the real tension isn't in the results. It's in the subtext. There are no cross statements. There is no explicit tension. There is silence. And in that silence, the true rivalry brews. Because both know that Ferrari won't tolerate peaceful coexistence if there is a clear number one. The team needs results. And only one can set the tone. In a season where every point counts and where McLaren, Red Bull, and Mercedes lurk, Ferrari can't afford an internal war. But neither can it ignore what happens on the track. Hamilton hasn't come to be anyone's squire. He signed with Ferrari to win. To close his legacy with a historic feat, and while the official narrative is one of cooperation, the reality is that in Formula One, coexistence has an expiration date if one of the two begins to lose influence within the team. Mutual respect is only maintained as long as the competitive balance is maintained. The most disturbing thing about this story is that the rivalry hasn't exploded yet. Everything remains contained, strategic, silent. But if Hamilton manages to dominate the SF25, and if he starts beating Leclerc regularly, that apparent harmony will be shattered. Because at Ferrari, as at any great team, there is only room for one true leader. And history has shown us that when that moment arrives, the consequences can be unpredictable. Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari, two giant entities of Formula One that, for decades, seemed destined to walk parallel paths without ever crossing paths. But in 2025 they have finally met. And while the start hasn't been a fairy tale story, everything indicates that this alliance could become the most dangerous combination of the season. What unites them goes beyond prestige. It's the shared need for redemption. Ferrari, historically burdened by a title drought that has lasted more than a decade. Hamilton, seeking to write his last great chapter in the sport, one that will free him from the stagnation of his final years at Mercedes and restore his luster as an unbeatable champion. This fusion of objectives doesn't just generate pressure. It creates hunger. And in Formula One, when a hungry team meets an equally hungry driver, the result is rarely neutral. It's disruptive. It's explosive. Technically, Ferrari has already shown it has what it takes. The SF25, despite its ups and downs, has a solid foundation and is evolving in the right direction. Even more importantly, it's doing so in parallel with Hamilton's adaptation. The car is improving and the driver is improving with it. That synergy between machine and human is rare. And when it appears, it's usually unstoppable. The same is true psychologically. After the slump in Bahrain, Hamilton received support, not pressure. They gave him air to breathe. An emotional space that Ferrari hasn't always granted him. That supportive environment could be the key to unlocking his peak performance. Because Hamilton has always performed better when he feels supported. And this time they are. Added to all this is a silent but decisive element, the time factor. Hamilton didn't come to Ferrari for a testimonial season. This is a medium-term project. He knows it and so does Ferrari. Which means this season isn't just a fight for results. It's a war to build hegemony. To wrest Red Bull's dominance, to break McLaren's rise, and to restore Ferrari's narrative as an invincible team. But for that to happen, a key question must be answered. When Hamilton and Ferrari fully align, with the car obeying every movement and the driver extracting every tenth of a second, who will be able to stop them? Who will have the pace, the strategy, the consistency to stop a seven-time champion in his second youth, at the helm of the most iconic team in motorsport? That is the silent threat this alliance represents. A threat that, if it materializes, could redefine not only this season, but the entire Formula One hierarchy. And the most disturbing thing of all, is that it has already begun.